nitrogen, phosphorus, and of sulfur. We're going to talk a lot about those cycles in the biogeochemical lecture. Kingdom Plantae includes things like mosses and the vascular plants. So there's some moss on the tree on the left, and on the right, a beautiful vascular plant, the flower of it anyway. Here's the best kingdom most of us think, eukaryotes, the kingdom Animalia. Stuff that's really cute, some that's not so cute. Animals need to ingest complex organic compounds as a source of energy and for growth. So unlike some of the others that can make their energy from carbon dioxide, sunlight, and whatnot, we and other animals need to actually ingest that or eat food as a source of energy and for growth. In the kingdom Animalia, it is exclusively multicellular eukaryotes. So, remember we talked about some guys, the Protoctistas, being single-cellular kinds of guys. Well, here in the kingdom Animalia of the eukaryotes, we have only multicellular guys, like us. Many, many cells building up one organism. So, we've talked about some of the kingdoms. Let's say classification within a kingdom. So you can still keep classifying more than just saying something is an animal, for instance. The fundamental unit or category within a kingdom is called the species. The individuals of a species can interbreed in nature and do not interbreed with members of other species. So for example, humans. Let's go down the taxonomic classification within the kingdom. So the kingdom is Animalia. The phylum is called Chordata. The class Mammalia. The order Primates. Family Hominidae, genus Homo, and the species is Homo sapiens, which means humans. So that is the taxonomic classification of us as humans. I'm not going to ask you to tell me the taxonomic classification of a human, but I would expect you to know kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. We do that in grade school. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Those are the taxonomic categories. I don't expect you to know examples of it, say these, but I do expect you to know those words. Okay? So as you move up towards kingdom, you're getting to the biggest unit, and as you move down towards species, you have the largest number of shared characteristics. So what does that mean? Well, in a kingdom, you have a large unit, lots of different animals, for instance. Well, maybe a sloth and a monkey and a human and a whale don't have all that much in common. But as you move down in the taxonomic order towards species level, you have more and more shared characteristics, more and more things in common. So you can get down to the primate order and find Hominidae family, or you can find all kinds of different monkeys and other things that are quite similar to us, even though they are not the same species. So we were talking before about ecosystems. An ecosystem includes the communities of organisms living in a certain environment and the environment in which they live. So this is different, isn't it? Because we are talking about not only the biotic part, but also the environment in which they live. A good example of an ecosystem is a pond. The ecosystems must be in dynamical balance to function properly and be sustainable. They have to have balance. They must have energy and nutrient sources, and they must maintain a relationship between those biotic and abiotic components that allows the processes of energy flow and nutrient cycling to go on efficiently. So that means everything has to work properly together. They need the hydrologic end of things. They need water. They need soil from lithologic things. They need biota, plants, animals, different things. They need to have that cycling that we talked about at the very beginning, cycling of energy and nutrients. We talked about that right at the first day of this course, that the different systems, the different earth systems, cycle energy and nutrients between them. The biotic, we already know what that means. Abiotic means non-living components, things like rocks, dirt, water, this sort of thing. Okay? So in the ecosystems, you're going to need to read the text for more details. So if you haven't been reading in the text along with what I've been doing this year, this is one section where you really are going to have to do that. So if you choose a chapter for this test to read in the text, make it this one. A reminder, the ecosystems are the communities of organisms living in the environment plus that environment in which they live. That's a good tricky question on the test, the difference between an ecosystem and just the biotic parts of it. So it's just a blow up of that ecosystem within the pond. There's interactions between each of the different earth systems that are present, the atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere. So, I've seen this on a test before. The basic components of ecosystems. We want to classify the organisms based on their function in the system. I did mention that one of the ways we can classify organisms is by function. So, the different functions you could have if you're a part of the ecosystem. You could be a producer. You could be a primary consumer. You could be a secondary consumer. Or you could be a decomposer. So here we have a little ecosystem. We have the sun sending in energy, so it's an abiotic component, the sun's energy. Some of the biotic components over here, we have the producers. These guys are the ones that use the energy from the light to make organic matter from inorganic matter. Humans can't do that, can we? We have to eat food. These producers use the energy from the light to make organic matter. Consumers, you could be a primary consumer and eat those producers, or you could be a secondary consumer and eat the primary consumers. So maybe a secondary consumer would be a fox that comes and eats this poor little rabbit. And the little rabbit's a primary consumer that eats these plants. Then we also have decomposers. We did discuss a little bit about decomposers that actually consume and convert that dead plant and animal matter and release the energy and nutrients for use in the system again. So you can go straight from producers to consumers, or you can go straight from producers to decomposers if your plants are rotting and no one's eating them in the interim. Each time you go up, you're losing heat energy. You can't keep all the energy that came from the sun and take it through the whole cycle. Some of it is lost at each stage. Also important in the ecosystem is the physical setting. Things like the water, the soil, air, light, temperature, and nutrients. This is a good diagram. I like this one. So we just went through that. The producers, autotrophs. These guys use sunlight energy to synthesize their organic matter. That means they grow their tissues from things like inorganic carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water, and inorganic nutrients. These inorganic nutrients come from soil or from dissolved water, or have been dissolved in water rather. This process is called photosynthesis. You can see this tree is photosynthesizing. He's getting water from the clouds, he's getting light energy, he's getting carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and he's getting nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, and potassium. And then all these things go into the tree and the plant makes its own food. The food it's made is a simple sugar called glucose. The formula for glucose happens to be 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. That's the simplest sugar. And you can also see that there's an arrow coming out of the tree. So what does that mean? That means that he takes in all these things and he builds his own food called glucose, but there's some waste products. Waste products for him, which are oxygen and water. These aren't waste products for us. This is great. We love trees because they give us lots of oxygen to breathe in the atmosphere. So more examples of producers. These autotrophs that are growing their own tissues. Examples of photosynthesizers, plants, algae, cyanobacteria. Okay, so now we're going to look at some more in-depth consumer stuff. So the primary and secondary consumers. These guys are heterotrophs. Organisms that need to consume complex organic compounds to grow their tissues and for energy. So we can't make our own, we have to consume organic compounds in order to make these tissues. So you're either a primary consumer where you're feeding directly on those producers, or you're a secondary consumer, you're feeding on the primary consumers. For example, herbivores like deer, cows, horses are primary consumers. Human vegetarians would fit in that category. Carnivores